Welcome to Studio B, everybody. I am your host, Pastor MDH. Thank you for joining us here on the set. Man, today, Deke, turn my thing down just a bit. There you go, a little bit more. 1, 2, there you go. So today, today we're going to jump right into this. And this is going to probably be a little bit longer than the other podcast, just a little bit longer. But before I go any further, man, I want to thank all of you guys. We have crossed over the 10,000 subscriber mark, man. Thank you for everybody that listens, tunes in, shares, comments on this podcast, man. We really appreciate your support over this last year and a half. It's been a journey. We've talked about a whole lot of stuff here on the table of Studio B, and thank you for all of those who support. But today, man, today, I want to talk about the raging debate that is in our land that always seems to rear its ugly head at the most inopportune moment. And you would have to be living under a rock right now to not know what's going on in regards to this raging debate of gun control and the Second Amendment. Of course, it's back in the news because 2 weeks ago in Uvalde, Texas, a 18-year-old guy went in and killed 19 school children and 2 teachers. And the gun debate, which has been raging for years and even decades, has reared its ugly head once again. But I want to bring a different perspective to this conversation, and we're going to talk about a lot today, but I want to make this clear distinction. America does not have a gun control problem. I repeat, now before you turn it off, just listen to me. America does not have a gun control problem. America has a violence problem. America has an anti-God problem. America has largely withdrawn itself from the civil discourse of what it means to cherish life. Life is expendable here within the borders of America, and to relegate all of this to guns is to be disingenuous at best. This gun control issue, which is nothing more than that, gun control, basically comes down to the sentiment of people should be allowed to do X, and the people that are relegating people to do X say we have the right and authority to tell you what to do. The gun control debate has largely been, for me, a real pie in the sky type of argument because it comes down to semantics. Because what always happens in times like this, especially with Uvalde on the backdrop of the American landscape, as tragic as it is, we jump on the emotional bandwagon and we start to push agendas and ideas that don't help the problem that we're talking about. It becomes very political very early on and stays political through its entire life cycle. And so in this debate that is now raging with gun control, I want to give you some stuff here that I hope will provide some type of balance, because as a parent, when I heard of Uvalde and as a parent of 4 children, my heart was broken. The senselessness of that violence was absolutely abhorrent. In 2018, when we had the Parkland shooting, where 17 kids died at a local high school, my heart again was bruised because of the senseless loss of life. But what I want you guys to understand is you got to look at this not from the simple A and B from guns and this or that, but I want you to understand the environment. And the environment has a lot to do with how we perceive things. So let me start off by telling you what the Second Amendment is. The Second Amendment is an amendment to the Constitution of the United States adopted in 1791 as a part of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights. the Bill of Rights that provided a constitutional check on the congressional powers under Article 1, Section 8 to organize and arm militia. The Second Amendment reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. And here is the only amendment that has these 4 words in it. The only amendment out of 27 that has this particular language in it: shall not be infringed. It doesn't say that about free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press. It doesn't say that about any of the other amendments or the Bill of Rights. But in this particular Second Amendment, it specifically says shall not be infringed. And this is referring to the modern times and an individual's right to carry and use arms for self-defense. The Second Amendment was envisioned by the framers of the Constitution. So when you hear this thing about the Second Amendment, or 2A, you're talking about the right to keep and bear arms. Now, let's talk about this because in this political hot potato that's being thrown across the aisle, blue, red, Republican, Democrat, it is all for the cameras, in my humble opinion. Okay. Because when we're talking about regulating firearms, we don't talk about the criminals. And when you don't talk about the criminals in this hotly contested debate, the debate loses all merit. Let me tell you what makes a criminal. A criminal is one that does not obey the law. Can I tell you something? That cocaine in all 50 states in America is absolutely illegal. In all 50 states in America, within the borders of the United States of America, cocaine is illegal. But cocaine is readily available in all 50 states in America. Why? Because criminals do not obey the law. That's what makes them criminals. That's why they are on the fringe of society and not a part of society. Because you have those who do not want to obey the letter of the law, who want to color outside of the lines. With Mr. Salvador Ramos, this lunatic, this 18-year-old kid who went into a school and murdered 19 kids and 2 teachers and shot his grandmother before he left. This is a criminal that had criminal intent to do harm to other people. But it begs the question of why. Now, I'm not going to go over here and go over there. There's so many different things that we need to talk about because this gun debate is not simple by any stretch of the imagination. It is not a cut and dry, black or white, this will fix all problems. This is not that type of issue. This is a highly complex issue that requires a lot of forethought and reasonable thinking. But I would say that in America, especially within this last quarter century, even all the way to half a century, about 25 to 50 years, America has become a culture, an environment of violence. We thrive off of it. We make money off of it. It has become prevalent in American society for us to live, to enjoy, to benefit from violence. And so this goes to a greater degree of where we are as a nation culturally, the ethics, the morality of what we claim to be right versus wrong, and then how this plays out in the public square. I have long since said that the degradation of the family is going to be the downfall of America. The degradation, the explosion of the family, to blow up the nuclear family is going to be the downfall of America. It is going to cripple America of how we are destroying families. This guy, Salvador Ramos, is just another example of a broken and bruised guy that comes out of a hellish family with no parameters, no father, no mother, no cohesiveness of parenting, no structure around him, and he was allowed to run amok at 18 years old. And I've said, and I will continue to say, that the breakdown of the family is going to be the Achilles heel of America. Because we do not honor family, because we do not honor the nuclear family, and we got so many different facets in the whole thing called family now, it is leading to the degradation of our nation. And so I want to share a couple of things here. Because I am for those who don't know, I make no apologies about it. I am a Second Amendment advocate. I believe in the right to keep and bear arms. I believe in the right to protect myself, my property, and those that I love. I am a very experienced gun owner. I have been licensed for some 16 years now. I have several certifications and training up under my belt, so I'm well equipped at handling a firearm, and I do not take those things for granted. But one of the things that really incenses me about this debate is the disingenuousness of it. We have those on this side that says you should take away guns and harm the people like myself who are law-abiding citizens, who do what the law says to do. The law says that you got to go to school, you got to get this, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to cross this T, you got to dot that I, you got to send this paperwork in, you got to do fingerprints, you got to do background checks, you got to do all of that if you want this. Law-abiding citizens like myself and millions of other people do exactly that. We do paperwork, we do fingerprints, we do background checks. We have been through the FBI database, the Homeland Security. We've been through local law enforcement database. We've been going back and forth and ripped through the ringer because you said that's what we should do in order to obtain this particular firearm. And those of us who are law-abiding citizens understand that and acquiesce to those laws. That's what we do. Because we are law-abiding citizens trying to live a life under the law. But I want you to see something about this gun debate that is really a farce to me. Because what we want to do is we want to disarm citizens and only have a group of citizens that have all the protection. So you want to take away my guns, but yet you have armed detail that walk with you everywhere that you go. Your house is protected because you got police, you got this, you got that sitting at the corner of your house. Nobody would dare come into your house because they know the type of business that they would get. But yet you want to disarm law-abiding citizens who are not out there breaking the law, who are not out there robbing people, who are not out there killing folks. And you are trying to group me and millions of other people into one particular group with fringe lawbreakers. Okay, and it's difficult to try to get your hands around this thing. It's really difficult because there's so much emotion to it. There's so much tears and heartache and all of the rest that comes along with it. And I understand it. I do understand it. But I want to share a couple of things with you, and I'm going to give you some background and I'm going to give you some history to how we got here. But I want you to understand something. When we're talking about deaths by guns, and this is according to the FBI statistics. You can get on FBI.gov and you can look this stuff up for yourself. I'm going back to the most recent data that we have, which is 2019 by FBI statistics. And in 2019, the FBI said that we had 42,362 deaths by guns. Okay, gun violence. But out of that number, I want you to hear this now. Out of that 40,000 plus number of death by guns, 66% of that was by suicide. America is the only nation in the world to count death by suicide as a gun death. We are the only nation on the planet that counts death by suicide by gun as a gun death. 66% of the 45,000 deaths that the FBI said happened in 2019 by guns were by suicide. I want you to think about that number. Because if you listen to any of the pundits on TV, on this station, that station, this station, that station, if you pull up anything on social media, you will hear we have an epidemic of gun violence. That's all you hear. We have an epidemic of gun violence this, gun violence that. And I would agree that we have an epidemic. We have a problem with gun violence. But I want to point this out about how we get to such conversations that are not, in my opinion, genuine. So 66% of that 40,000 plus deaths by guns are by suicide. So if you take 66% of that, you're down to roughly between 11 and 15,000 deaths by gun. Now watch this. Out of that number, 300 to 500 of those deaths are by accidental discharge. That means that somebody's not handling a gun properly. They're playing with the gun, which you should never, ever, 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 ever do. You don't play with the gun. You treat every single weapon as if it is loaded. But you got 300 to 500 of those deaths that the FBI considered to be death by gun in 2019 from accidental discharge. And it's even so much when you go to the gun range and you see people taking pictures and handling guns haphazardly and things of that nature. 300 to 500 of those deaths are by accidental discharge. Another 500 of those deaths are warranted use of deadly weapon. In other words, it's when someone kills another person defending themselves or a loved one. Another 500 of those deaths, which is not murder, by the way, which is not murder. Okay, when somebody is protecting their life and protecting their property, that is not murder. That's called self-defense. As recently as 2 days ago, in Kentucky, an 18-year-old kid decided that he wanted to go out and carjack this guy at a gas station. And so he pulled up on him, pulled a gun out on him, and tried to carjack his car, not knowing that the owner of that car was a licensed gun owner, and the owner of that car returned fire, killing that 18-year-old who tried to jack him from his car at gunpoint. He wound up dying, along with his cohort, who wound up getting critically injured because he got shot too. Another 500 of those deaths are actually warranted by the use of a deadly weapon. So now we got 45,000 gun deaths. We got 66% of those that are by suicide. America is the only country in the entire world that counts suicide as a gun death. We got about 300 to 500 of those, which are accidental discharges. We got another 500 of those, which are warranted use of a deadly weapon. Then watch this, the 90% of the other 10,000 deaths by guns are with handguns in urban areas and gang-related violence. Gang-related violence. I've often shared this with people, and do you think a gang member is going into an academy, going into a Dick's Sporting Good, and putting his license down on the table when he has every intention of using that gun in a very illegal way? You think he's going to go into an academy or Dick's Sporting Good and say, here's my license, here's my information, let me get this gun, register this gun in my name, because I'm getting ready to go use this gun in the arbitration of a crime. I'm getting ready to go do a drive-by with this gun. So I want this gun registered to me. That's not how gang members, that's not how drug dealers work. In the same way that you can get cocaine, which is illegal in every single state in America, you can get a gun by illegal means. But unless the conversation is about disarming criminals and taking their guns away, then we should really try to abstain from affecting law-abiding citizens who are not a Salvador Ramos, who's not a nut, who's not a crazy guy, who's not a lawbreaker, And 99% of all gun owners, 99% of all legal registered gun owners are doing the right thing by handling those firearms. I know this is a touchy subject because we're listening to the news. We're listening to the news. And so it's very difficult to have a very complex discussion about this when we're so emotionally charged. So that data from the FBI was 45,000 people died from gun-related violence in the U.S. It is very difficult to have this conversation post-Uvalde, post-Parkland, post-Las Vegas, post all of these things that are happening and really not spur the emotions, because you're telling me, and I know some of you are already thinking, how could you think like that? Why does anybody need a gun like that? Why does anybody need an AR-15? And by the way, AR does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for armor light rifle. Okay, it stands for armor light rifle. AR does not stand for assault rifle. Okay, but why does anybody need a armor light rifle, AR-15 with 30 mags or a 30 round clip, 30 round magazine? Excuse me. Why does anybody need that? That's the question out there. I want to show you some things. Why does anybody need a gun that holds 30 bullets? And the AR-15, the AR-308, the AR 9mm, the AR-300 Blackout, those are armor light rifles, very modular rifles that can be customized and this, that, and the other. But why does anybody need them? What's the point in having them? We should take those things away. Those are assault style weapons. The average gun, handgun in America, the average gun, handgun, holds 12 rounds. 12 rounds in a magazine. It is very common for handguns to have 15 to 17 rounds per magazine. A handgun, one that you can fit in your hand. They can be anywhere, average is 12, but they can go anywhere up to 18 rounds. And I'm talking about a standard magazine. I'm not talking about any bells or any whistles. So let's say you got a Glock 17 that has 17 rounds, and then you keep one in the chamber. You got 18 rounds in a handgun. Now, if you got two clips, you got 35 rounds. You got 35 rounds if you got two clips. That's in a handgun. You got the same capacity in a handgun that you do with an AR-15. It's just semantics. It's just semantics. It is because what we have done in this nation is politicize everything with no real, clear, concise agenda to address the issues that need to be addressed. I want to share with you some statistics from the CDC, the Center of Disease Control, as recently as 2020. In 2020, 696,962 people died from heart disease. 696,962 people died from heart disease. In 2020, 602,350 people died from cancer. In 2020, 200,955 died from unintentional injuries. 160,264 died from stroke. 154,657 died from chronic lower respiratory diseases. 134,242 died from Alzheimer's. 102,188 died from diabetes. 53,544 died from influenza and pneumonia. 52,547 died from nephropathy syndrome and neurophysis. In that same year, 49,698 in the United States alone died from motor vehicle accidents. In that same year, the CDC says that 41,000 people died from gun violence. Now, I want you to think about this. We got 696,962 people died from heart disease. Heart disease is preventable. We had 100,188 people die from diabetes. Diabetes is preventable. Now, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this in America. We have a problem with people being overweight and dying from heart disease, dying from cholesterol, dying from high blood pressure, to the tune of 696,000 people every single year die because they're not healthy. They die because they're not healthy. They die from being overweight. They die because they don't eat right. They die because of all of this. Almost 700,000 people every single year die because they're not healthy, because their bodies are not taken care of. But yet we don't force any agenda to eat right. We don't take away the McDonald's, the Wendy's, the Whataburgers. We don't take away any of that stuff when we know unequivocally that that stuff is contributing to heart disease, high blood pressure, and cholesterol. We don't take away the Dr. Peppers and the Cokes out of the stores. We don't take away the big packs of sugar. We don't take away any of that when we know that all of those things are contributing to 700,000 people every single year dying. 102,188 people die because of diabetes. Diabetes is not hereditary. Okay. Diabetes can be prevented. As a matter of fact, diabetes can be cured. High blood pressure can be cured. Cholesterol can be cured. All of those things are direct impacts to your eating habits, to your diets. We got almost 1 million people a year die because they're overweight and unhealthy. 1 million. We got 49,000 people that die on the highways and byways of America, but we're not banning cars. We got 40,000 people that are dying by gun death and violence, and that's where we put all the attention at. We don't put the attention on the 1 million plus people that are dying because they are overweight, and dying because they don't eat right, dying because they don't exercise, dying because they don't know how to take care of themselves, and they're dying in record numbers, but yet we put all the attention on the gun deaths. And I think that's disingenuous, because no matter what, it always becomes political. It always becomes a political argument. I want to share this with you. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. Let me share with you how we got here, because we need to trace this trail. That was a point in time in American history where going up to the 5th grade, middle school, high school, where a part of your curriculum, a part of your assignment was hunting. America and the mass shootings, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. This is relatively a new phenomenon. And I say within the last quarter plus century in regards to mass shootings. The FBI determines a mass shooting to be anything more than 3 people. So anything more than 3 people that are dying at one time or dying at a single time, and an arbitrary act of violence is considered to be a mass shooting by the FBI standards. So anytime that 3 or more people are killed or shot, that is a mass shooting, according to FBI data. Now, that number has been greatly argued in regards to the threshold of being 3. Some said it needs to be 8. Some said it needs to be 10. But the FBI has determined that that number is 3. So when you hear stuff like since Uvalde, there have been 20 mass shootings in America, mass, meaning in mass, that number would be like, well, it's 20 mass shootings in the last 2 weeks in America. Well, over 3 people have died at once by the hands of a criminal who was out to intent bodily harm. If y'all remember the young man that escaped from prison by hijacking the prison bus and then was on the run from the authorities and wound up killing a grandfather and his 4 children. He killed them all. That's considered a mass shooting. But watch this. Nobody is blaming the gun in that instance. Gun debate has not even come up in that instance. This criminal who escaped from prison, took over a prison bus, and then eventually goes and kills a grandfather and his 4 children, technically by FBI standards, just committed a mass shooting, a mass murder. But there's no conversations about the gun that he used. There's no conversations about taking guns away because we understand that he is a criminal and that's what criminals do. And unfortunately, a grandfather and 4 of his grandchildren got caught in the melee of an absolute lunatic. That's technically, by FBI standards, a mass shooting. But when did the first mass shooting happen? I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a man by the name of Howard Ura. And Howard Ura was the first mass murder in U.S. history. It's called the Walk of Death. And I want to give you a little bit about this man called Howard Ura, a war veteran that killed 13 people by shooting from a window down into the crowded streets. So on Labor Day of 1949, Howard Ura decided to go to the movies. He left his Camden, New Jersey apartment and headed to the Family Theater in downtown Philadelphia. On the bill that night was a double feature, a double-crossing gangster movie, I Cheated the Law, and The Lady Gambles, in which Barbara Stanwyck played a poker and dice game addict. Ura, however, wasn't interested in the picture. He was supposed to meet with the man to whom he had been having a weeks-long affair. Unfortunately for Ura, 28 years old at the time, traffic held him up, and by the time that he had reached the theater, the well-known gay pickup spot on Market Street, his date was gone. Ura sat in the dark until about 2 o'clock in the morning, bitterly stewing through multiple on-screen loops of the movies. At 3 a.m., he arrived home in New Jersey to find that his newly constructed fence at the rear of his backyard, one that he erected to quell an ongoing feud with the Cohens who lived right next door to him and owned a drugstore below the apartment by which he shared with his mother, had been tampered with and the gate was missing. The final straw, this was the final straw for Ura. For a couple of years, Ura had been contemplating killing several of his Kramer Hill neighbors over petty squabbles, perceived slights and name callings, all which fueled his psychosis. Ura thought that the world was out to get him, and he decided to enact revenge on his little corner of it. He went to his apartment, uncased a German Luger P08, a 9mm pistol he purchased from a sporting goods store in Philadelphia for $37.50. And he secured it with 2 clips of 33 loose cartridges. Unable to sleep, he made yet another mental list of his intended targets, a group of local shopkeepers. One would find that in 1950s book, the druggist, the shoemaker, the tailor, and the restaurant owner. Eventually, Ura dozed off into a deep daze. In a few hours, on the morning of Tuesday, September the 6th, Ura would embark upon his walk of death, murdering 13 people and wounding 3 others in a 20-minute rampage before hauled off by police in a dangerous firefight. A somewhat forgotten man outside of the criminology circles and old-timers, Ura was an early chapter of the all too familiar American story, an angry man with the gun inflicting carnage. Ura, 1949. Crazy man with a gun. If you look from 1949 all the way up, the issues of mass shootings have been increasing more and more. When you look at this man, Ura, and his walk of death to where he killed 13 people and wounded another 3 because he was a psychotic man hell-bent on inflicting pain on others. Last week in New Jersey, a young black lady by the name of Angela Mai foiled a would-be mass shooter by shooting the assailant before he got into the store by which he was intending to inflict pain and murder on the customers. Here's this young black lady who was a license carry owner who walked into a situation to where this man was getting ready to inflict danger upon the people in this store. She shot him before he was able to get in. He was then arrested and taken off to jail. What beats a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Now, please hear me. I don't think that everybody should have guns. I do believe that you should have the right to get guns, but I don't believe that everybody should have guns because people don't train themselves with it. And as one that's got several hours and several trainings in weapons, I can just tell you that people don't honor weapons. People don't understand the power that a gun has. They treat it very casually. I don't think that everybody should have them. Now, I'm going to fight for your right to get them, but I don't think that everybody should have them. I think if you're going to have them, then you need to be well trained in handling a firearm. You need to be well trained in handling a firearm. Well trained in handling a firearm. Shooting at a piece of paper on a gun range is much different than shooting somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning and that is broken into your house. You need to be well trained on how to do that. As a pastor, people say, well, Pastor Holman, how could you be on board with that? Like, how could you be on board with guns? You're a pastor. Can I tell you something about the Bible? The Bible mentions this. I don't know if you've ever read the Bible, but the Bible is full of violence. Like, it's full of violence. As a matter of fact, in Exodus chapter number 22, it gives us an idea about what God thinks towards self-defense. Exodus 22:2 says, if a thief is caught breaking in at night and is struck with a fatal blow, the defender is not guilty of his bloodshed. That's Exodus chapter 22, verse 2. That if a criminal comes into my house at night, breaks into my house, and he gets shot, I am not guilty of that man's bloodshed. This is actually in your Bible as well as it is in mine. In Luke 22:36, he said to them, but now let the one who has a money bag take it, and likewise a knapsack. And let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. I want you to think about something in the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus was getting ready to enter into the most difficult part of his life, the most difficult 6 or 7 hours of his life. He was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and this legion of Roman soldiers came in and they seized Jesus. And then Peter, being who Peter was, took out his sword, drew his sword, and cut off Malcolm's ear, to which Jesus said, put your sword away. Put your sword away. Now, I want you to think about this. Peter, who walked with Jesus every single day, carried a sword with him. If this was 2022 Peter would have had a gun on him. But here it is, Peter pulls out his sword, to which he had every day of his life because he was a fisherman. And no doubt, being a fisherman in that particular area, there were some places that Peter didn't want to go. And if he had to go, Peter wanted some protection with him. Jesus didn't scold him for having the sword, but rather told him to put it away, because that's not how Jesus was going to win the fight by which he was sent here to do, to win the battle. Jesus was going to win the battle spiritually, not physically. Therefore, he told Peter to put his sword away. He did not reprimand Peter for having a sword. That's not why he did that. In Psalms 144, verse number 1 of David, David said, blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. David, being a warrior, no doubt took many lives in his war campaign. David was a man that had a sword, had a weapon of defense. Moses had a staff. So when we're talking about guns, and we're talking about, especially within this context, I know it's one of these hot button issues that is highly, highly emotional, but not very well thought out. I know this may sound clichéic, but guns don't kill people, people kill people. And as I've said many times before, sitting right here at this table, it is because America has been fascinated with death. that death is so prevalent in our nation. I find it very, very hypocritical and very disingenuous for people to be outright mad by the massacres that have happened, which is absolutely tragic, and by which God will exact judgment on those people who carried out those such attacks. But they have absolutely no problem with slaughtering babies in the womb. They have absolutely no problem with allowing babies to be murdered in the womb. They have no problem with 1.8 million babies being aborted in the womb, but now all of a sudden are concerned about the safety of children. To me, it is a very hypocritical stance. Because again, I know several people that own guns, that are licensed gun owners, who 99.9% of them are doing well, and they are not out there breaking the law with the guns that they have legally purchased. Legally purchased. I know countless people that fall into that category. And so to take the 99.9% of people who are doing right, who are following the law, and say, I don't care about the 99.9%. I want the 0.1% like this fool in Uvalde, or the fool in Parkland, or the fool in Las Vegas. I want those people to pay the price for everybody. And that's just not right. It's just not right. I would argue that taking away guns is one of the most detrimental things that I believe this nation would do. Now, Canada, just last week, Trudeau, this oligarch, just said that all sales of guns in Canada are going to be prohibited. That's buying, selling, or trading. Canada's going to become a gun-free zone. Everybody's like, wow, look at Canada, look at Austria, look at Australia. Do you understand the crime rates in those cities? I want you to think about this, man. I was just sharing with a friend of mine. I went to go see Top Gun, I guess about 2 weeks ago, about a week and a half ago. And as I'm walking into different particular places, I see 3006, 3007 signs. Okay, 3006 is a law that prohibits the carrying of a weapon, concealed weapon. That's 3006, and 3007 is the law that prohibits open carry. So you'll see a 3006 and a 3007 sign on these particular businesses, which says that you cannot bring a weapon on these premises. I was sharing with a friend of mine that if a criminal is going to be a criminal, where would a criminal want to go? He will want to go to the place that has the least amount of resistance. He wants to go to a place to where he knows he can get in and get out without any type of issue. He would go to what's called a soft target. So if you're going to all of these places and they got 3006 signs over here, 3007 signs over there, and they say that you cannot bring your licensed carry onto these premises, those are prime targets for people who want to do wrong, because they understand nobody in those premises are going to fire back. Nobody's going to be able to stop them from doing what they are hell-bent on doing. And so I'm going into all of these places and they're popping up everywhere. They're popping up everywhere. Okay, people don't want you to carry guns. And I'm always amazed at that, because when I look at people who are doing wrong, and I look at these fools in Chicago, these fools out here in the urban areas of Houston, Texas, and Dallas and San Antonio, where all of these murders are happening and black men and black women are falling by the wayside, where little babies are being shot and killed in drive-bys. Those are not by law-abiding citizens. Those are criminals. So why are we rewarding criminals and saying, criminals, you can keep your AK-47, you can keep your AR-15s, you can keep your multi-magazine pistols, you can keep all of that stuff. We don't want to mess with you. We want to mess with the 99.9% of people who are doing right and who are obeying the law. Yes, Uvalde is tragic, everybody. I'm not advocating for that. If I had my way, I would not take away the right to keep and bear arms, but I would say that training must go with that. I believe that that is a compromise by which I am, that I think we can do. Just got to hear breaking alert. An armed man arrested near Brett Kavanaugh's home after making threats against justice. So here it is, a armed man, a psychopath, is going to one of the justices of the Supreme Court, going to his home and making threats. Just now. So when we're talking about this issue, everybody, I know it's a hot button issue. I know it is. But I want to know why my politicians get armed security to the T with AR-15s, Benelli shotguns, Mossberg 500s, high-capacity magazines in their handguns, multiple clips on their tactical vests. Why they get those people that are walking around with them protecting every move that they have, but then you tell me, a law-abiding citizen that has never been in trouble with the law, that I can't. Now, as a licensed gun owner, you are run through the ringer before they will give you a license to carry a gun. I'm talking about a license. I'm talking about where you have been domestically cleared within your local municipality. You have been statewide cleared through your state government, and then federally cleared as they run through all of these background checks, making sure that you can't get a weapon if you don't need one. If you've got any type of domestic violence on your record, you will not get a gun. If you got any type of felonies on your record, you will not be able to get a concealed handgun license to carry a gun lawfully within these United States. But they're taking the 99.9%, and that number is not skewed. It's 99.9% of good law-abiding citizens who are not out there doing wrong. And so I know this whole gun debate is very, 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 very political and very, very, very divisive. I understand that. I do. I absolutely do. But can we take some time and walk through these things and come up with some real solutions that are going to do some real good? So I understand where it is. I understand what we're talking about. But everybody, please hear me. This thing is not as simple as what people are making it out to be. And I understand that we're dealing on the back ends of some fool that was allowed to purchase. And I told you this. Something just ain't right about that. You got this guy, Ramos, who is 18 years old, no job, no credit card, nothing. He goes and buys 2 Daniel Defense AR-15s. A Daniel Defense AR-15, just basic stock, runs at about $2,500. Basic. And it had optics on it, so you add another $500 for an optic. So you got $3,000 guns. He got $6,000 worth of guns. He's got $1,000 worth of ammunition of AR-15. AR-15 per round is running about 96 cents per round. So he's got $6,000 worth of guns, another $1,000 worth of ammunition, and then he's got a $700 armor plate of armor on, and he's 18 years old with no job, no money, no credit card, nothing. Like, where did he get that stuff? Like, what did he get? What did this guy in New Jersey write on his AR-15? The word nigger, the word here is your reparations, drives 4 hours to Buffalo, New York, walk inside of a supermarket and randomly kill 10 black people and then gets arrested with no incident? Y'all think that stuff is by coincidence? Y'all think it's by coincidence? Y'all think that now in every news cycle we're hearing about all of this other stuff, but we don't hear about in Chicago. We don't hear about in Houston. We don't hear about in Miami. We don't hear about in Dallas and in Los Angeles and in Frisco. These people that are dying by bullets by the hands of criminals. That's not making the news. But a mass shooting over 3 is all of a sudden all in the news. Everybody, I think that right now America is on a slippery slope. And I have some concerns. I have concerns that we don't have people in positions that are doing the right thing and doing it from a place to where they are trying to help the people that put them in office. I don't believe that we have genuine and true people that hold office anymore. I think everybody has been to their own political agenda and everybody's got their hands in their pockets. I am highly discouraged with our entire political system, as I believe that it is almost worthless. I believe that it is almost to the point of just being worthless, just flat out being worthless, because we can't trust none of them, because everybody is paying somebody. Everybody is getting paid. Everybody is pushing an agenda that somebody paid them to push. And so without going down on that tangent, I know that this gun debate, everybody, is a hot and heavy debate that we're talking about right now. I understand that. I get it. But I want to tell you just to take a step back and breathe. Because with all of the violence that is going on in this nation right now, listen, everybody, I trust God. I trust God with my heart, my mind, my soul, and more importantly, my spirit for eternity. I know that God will take care of me. And to all of you who say, well, if you trust God, then why do you need to carry a weapon? I would ask you, if you trust God, then why do you lock your doors at night? I would ask you, if you trust God, why do you have insurance on your vehicle? If you trust God, why do you do this? Why do you do that? If you trust God, it's not a trusting of God issue, right? God has called us to be as gentle as doves, but as wise as serpents, right? And that's what the Bible says. And so I am 199,000% on board with God protecting me and God sending angels before me in order to cover me. I believe that, but I'm also a well-prepared individual. And I try to make sure that I stay ready so that I don't have to get ready. It has nothing to do with a lack of faith or confidence that God can keep me, or have a lack of faith and confidence that God is not able to hold me. None of that being true. I believe that God is able to do all of those things. But I do believe that God has also afforded me rights that I would do right by them. So in any way, God has given us common sense, and he's given us the waypoint of reasoning. And so for me, it's not a conflict of faith to trust God with everything, my life here on earth and my eternal life afterwards, but then also be in the same mindset of protecting me and my family. I believe that those things walk hand in hand together, and I do believe that one complements the other. So I believe in being well prepared, and I don't think that in this current culture that we're in right now, where violence is literally on every turn, I am not one that says take people guns. I do not believe that is the issue. I do not believe that is the issue. And so as you are talking through this particular issue about gun control, try not to be emotional with it, because let me ask you something. People that are going to do wrong are going to find a way to do wrong. The Bible says in Romans chapter number 1 that God gave them over to a depraved mind. That guy in Uvalde, Texas, that guy in 2018 in Parkland, they were given over to depraved minds. And make no mistake about it, as I said last week, those acts were influenced and carried out by Satan himself. But it goes to the culture by which we have now enshrined in America, where we love violence. We love it. We love it. And then we are shocked when violence rears its ugly head at us. So everybody, please hear this gun debate issue right now, gun control, is really a hot button issue that at the end of the day is not going to make a lot of sense to anybody or any party involved. Criminals go out and kill people for no reason. Not law-abiding citizens. I don't know anybody in my circle. I don't know anybody in my circle or my extended circle that has taken a gun and went out there and murdered somebody innocently. I don't know anybody like that. I don't know anybody that just pulls out their weapon, goes down the street and starts shooting in the air. I don't know anybody that'll walk into a supermarket, walk into a school, walk into a crowded area and just start shooting people. I don't know anybody like that. Nobody. because that's what criminals do, and I don't associate with criminals. So when we start talking about gun control, everybody, please don't penalize the 99.9% of people who are doing right by it. If you look at New York and California, they have the strictest gun control laws in America. California and New York. And California and New York are amongst the highest in the nation in murders by guns. And they have the most restrictive gun laws in all of America. Because you know who's not committing those crimes? People who go out and buy firearms legally. You know who are committing those crimes? Gangbangers, drug dealers. So the answer is not to penalize law-abiding citizens. The answer is to crack down on these criminals that got them. The answer is to do other things, because criminals are going to be criminals. That's what makes them criminals. So without belaboring this point, I just want to tell you, everybody, don't allow your emotions to rule you so that you can't make rational decisions. Understand what the issues are at hand, and then let's do our best to get to the table and start talking about these things in a very real way, in a very, very real way. So everybody, as I said, next week I'm gonna. No, I'll say that. I will say that. I will say that. All right. So everybody, thank you for joining us here on the set of Studio B. Pardon that moment. I was just reading one of my notes, making sure if I needed to say that or not, but I'll let that go into the next podcast. Everybody, thank you. Listen, like, bad, hate, love, whatever it may be. Let me know. Get into those comments. Let me know about those, like, shares and follows. Remember, on YouTube, Facebook, you can follow us and be alerted every time a new podcast drops. So get in the know. Thank you for helping us get over that 10,000 subscriber mark. Everybody, thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for your viewership and for your followership. Thank you for all of it. And remember, if God be for you, it's more than the entire world against you. Remember, when the enemy comes in like a flood, God will raise up a standard against him. Be informed, be empowered, Studio B. Y'all have a good one.